You ready? It's the Roundtable with me, Robert Bannon. Well, everyone, welcome to the Roundtable. My name is Robert Bannon. You're listening to us on the Broadway Podcast Network or watching us over here on Broadway World. I am snug as a rug here on this cold, freezing Friday because I'm here to hear about Victoria. Victoria is a legend. A legend is hatched, is what it says. It's great. I don't know. Is it a series? Is it a book? Is it a movie? Victoria's got a film that's going to premiere at a film festival in New York. We are going to find out the scoop. I feel like this is exclusive, people. I feel lucky. I want to know the whole story. Victoria Myers is here on the Roundtable to tell us. She quotes Elizabeth Taylor on her Instagram. I saw that. I want to know everything. Tell me everything.
Well, I do get compared to Elizabeth Taylor all the time.
As do I, Victoria.
I know it's I'm sure it's hard for us having to live with that just sitting over our shoulder, that comparison. But you know, it's a cross that somebody has to bear, and if it has to be us, you know, what are you gonna do?
Is this originally? So you're a comedian?
I'm not, or I mean, I guess in this form I am, but not a stand-up or anything. It started as a comedic newsletter over the pandemic where I was sort of sitting around in my apartment with my cat, who is really the one who should be compared to Elizabeth Taylor. They share much in common. And, you know, I think like a lot of people was looking for a way to keep busy and also sort of to remind people that I was alive and available for work. Because I think, you know, one of the things that sort of happened in the pandemic is that people sort of stuck to the people who they knew a lot. And if you were trying to break into a new field or do something a little different, it became that much harder to do it.
Sure.
And I think because of prior to that, a lot of what I'd done had been much more serious with like the interval and things like that, that I was like, I want to do something that shows a little bit more of my personality and the things I'm actually interested in. And particularly the fact that, you know, I happen to think I'm very funny and I've always been sort of interested in humor. I like a lot of things that are quite funny. So I started this newsletter that is from the point of view of a character who I describe as being overprivileged and underboundaried. Which I thought worked well because especially when the newsletter started, I basically signed up everyone I knew against their will. I was like, they can unsubscribe if they want. And so I started this newsletter from the perspective of this character who's sort of over the top, and her main goal in life is she just wants to be as famous outside of her head as she is inside it.
Got it. I understand. I think I am her. Go ahead. Tell me.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people in the arts can probably relate. And it evolved a little bit over time, but it's very much sort of, it's a monthly newsletter. So every month she sort of has a new scheme for how she's going to reach her goal of becoming famous. Very specifically, she sort of wants her own television show, but she's also willing to try other things. And it's very much sort of a madcap kind of screwball sensibility to it. Because I think sometimes when people hear the description, you can think maybe a little like Real Housewives or something like that, which it's really not at all. I think the comedy much more harkens back to the old screwball comedies and things like that, or even a little bit of like early Steve Martin and the sort of absurdist nature of it. And so then after I'd been doing that for a while, I'd also been working a little on helping some other people with their own sort of TV projects and stuff like that. And I wanted something that I could have more control over. So I started working on adapting it into what will hopefully become an episodic series. But we filmed the first episode last October. We finished it the end of the year. And so now we're sort of are trying to put it out there because we want to make some more independently and then obviously have it take off and become a huge hit.
Of course. But you're interesting because you founded, like you were talking about the publication, The Interval, which was a 5-year run. And you talked a lot about women in theater, and you did a lot of stuff with Broadway and theater and but that's just, like you said, like a serious journalism take. And then you have this whole alter ego kind of newsletter that kicks off. And I relate to the whole thing because this show started in the pandemic. I started a newsletter to get people to watch it. I signed up everybody I knew. It would hurt my feelings, Victoria, if I saw the unsubscribe list and it was someone that was my friend. How dare you not support me? And then it just goes. So what was it like? You premiered it on the 6th. Did you just premiere it?
Yes. Yeah.
So what is it like? Firstly, how did it go from the newsletter to, is it an episode that you star in, or who are the people in it? What's the process to get it on film?
Yeah, it was definitely a process, and it went through a few iterations. So the final iteration I am in, which was sort of an interesting experience, I will say, because I'd never been in front of a camera before. And then also Mike Iveson is in it, who I imagine maybe your listeners most know from What the Constitution Means to Me.
Yes.
He plays a very different type of part in this, and he's also just like hilarious and lovely. One of like the nicest, weirdest people in the world. He's fantastic. So he's in it, and then our plan for further episodes is we actually want to bring in more theater people to play some weird and interesting parts. But to go back and answer your question, yeah, it took a while to figure out what it was on screen, because the newsletter is all sort of direct address and talking to the audience. So it's switching forms in sort of multiple ways. And part of that also then, of course, on screen is like, how do you construct the world that this character lives in? Because in a newsletter, you know, people are reading and talking to an audience, but you don't necessarily have to deal with like the container, or at least you're dealing with the container in a different way. And for this, it was really important, and something that I thought a lot about. And then our cinematographer and production designer, we had a lot of discussions about sort of, one, creating a world where it's comedy first.
Yes.
Because really the thing is like, you want to make sure, especially in something where you're leading with the comedy and where it really is just about the jokes and doing something that is fun and silly and that people will laugh at. And, you know, it's not a parody, it's not a satire, it's not social commentary.
Yes.
So you want to really make sure that people know, like, okay, it's okay to laugh. Like, that's what you're supposed to be doing. And you need to sort of clue them into that very quickly. And then the other thing that became a real challenge with this is because the character is so over the top. We had to sort of create a world where that was believable, and where other people enter into that world and where they're sort of just as weird as she is, but in their own separate ways. Because I think if you had somebody come in and they were just sort of like, you're crazy, then that's sort of the audience's response as well. And you can't have that thing where somebody is thinking, well, shouldn't they just be calling a therapist?
Got it.
You know,
Okay.
like you want them to sort of stay in the world. So we created a world that is a very heightened reality, very absurdist. Weird things happen very quickly. It actually blends in a lot of like very theatrical elements to it. So you sort of are watching and very quickly know that this is like not realism. And we used a lot of elements that sort of come from very traditional stagecraft, actually, because that's so much of what was used in like old movies and particularly like old variety shows we looked at a lot. So like Carol Burnett or Sonny and Cher were like, you know, it's a set. Obviously, it's a set. It's not trying to be something that is not a set. So there's a level of artifice that's sort of throughout the entire thing. And then we also very much tried to create the look of old Technicolor, which is a real challenge for Sanjeev, our cinematographer, because, you know, all that stuff was filmed on film and we were filming digital. And it's just such a huge difference. And also all that stuff is filmed on sound stages. We were not filming in a sound stage. So you have to sort of like bring in all the lights and, you know, unlike a lot of things on film where you want to use natural light for the look we're going for, you don't want any natural light.
Got it.
So yeah, it was a real process, but really fun. And I think we're excited for more people to see it and also to kind of keep building on what we built in the first episode.
Absolutely. So my question to you always is, and I know you just we're at a film festival, and I know you just debuted it, and you just saw it up on people got to see it, an audience got to see it. So how can we support it? Is there a way for us to see it yet? And is it sharing it? Is it talking about it? Is it following you on social media? Like, what can we do to get the word out for this?
Yeah, thanks so much for asking. That's so nice of you. So people, they can see a clip of it. One of the deals with film festivals is that you're not allowed to have it publicly available online, as I'm sure you know, and I'm sure many people listening know. So we haven't released the first episode publicly yet. Our plan is to do 5 of them independently. So we're sort of in the process of planning the second one. And I think once we have that one done, we might put them up publicly. But the thing, if people are interested in, they can subscribe to the newsletter because it's still ongoing. And there's a page on there that's dedicated to the film series that has like behind the scenes photos, and it has a clip. And you can also hear the other thing that's very theatrical about it is our composer describes it as being as close to a musical as it can be without being an actual musical. It has like a very big score. And we have some behind the scenes footage of that being recorded because in order to sort of get that sound, our composer Jen like recorded it with an actual band. So we have some behind the scenes footage of that. But yeah, the best thing is if people want to follow the newsletter because that's where all the info is.
Okay, so how do we follow?
Oh, right. Sure. Sorry. I should have.
I'm an old person here. I haven't written anything since I was in college. So my question to you is, what is Substack? What do you do there? And is that where we find the newsletter?
Yes. So Substack, yes, it's where the newsletter is. And it's just victoriamyers.substack.com. I wish we had like a shorter web address for it, but that's what it is. So Substack, it's basically a newsletter platform. It became, I would say, prominent in, I want to say like 2020. I might not be totally correct about that. But basically, when the media industry started contracting a lot,
okay,
and all the problems that everybody reads about with publications laying off large parts of their staff or not having the budget to do long stories, Substack came along as a website where people could start their own newsletters and talk directly to readers. And they got some sort of big name people to come on there. I mean, I think they're still getting big names. I know Tina Brown just started one.
Okay.
So it's basically just a newsletter platform, though, to put it simply.
Perfect. I had no idea. So now we can go to Substack. You can listen to, you can get Victoria's, you can get this whole character. You can find out all the information about the film. When did you know you wanted to be a writer? Like, what made you think like writing is where I'm going? I teach in real life, and kids do not always love to write. So what about writing? When did you fall in love with writing?
I might still be waiting for that to happen. I think for me, it was more about, it was sort of more of a means to an end, I think, in the sense that because I'm definitely not a stand-up. I admire people who do it, but I know it's not me, for multiple reasons. So it just became a way to sort of be able to be funny that wasn't that. Especially because in a way, like there aren't a lot of options. And I think because I've always been interested in film and in television, the idea of sort of creating your own work that way, like you're going to have to write it. And a lot of people who I admire, you know, Tina Fey, Mindy Kaling. Yeah. They all sort of created their own things. I mean, this is sort of a unique thing because I'm also in it. And there's been some other stuff that I've worked on, which I'm definitely not in. But I think, you know, it's one of those things that I also just always did as a kid, as I think many only children do, because you're just sort of like making stuff up. And that sort of becomes part of the process of making things up. So yeah, in a way, it's also just something that I've always done, which I feel like is like not the best answer to your question. I wish I had a much more interesting one.
Is there a way for us to read your other work? Is it archived somewhere? Is there a place or a way that we can see all the Victoria Myers?
No, the only thing really is you can see all the back issues of the newsletter on Substack, which there's quite a bit of at this point. And then, I mean, the interval is still up, and obviously I did some writing for that. And I would say if anybody is interested in long profiles of people in the theater, the couple that I did for that, the one that I am sort of most proud of is one on Lear de Bassinet, which was written in 2019 or published in 2019, I should say. And obviously she keeps very busy and has some exciting things going on. But I spent about 6 months kind of following her around and interviewing her, and then wrote about it, which was great. And then I have another long profile on Bernadette Peters. That's still up there. That's pretty easy to find. Bernadette Peters I've never met. I wrote around her. And then the first one that I ever wrote for the interval was on Lee Silverman, also somebody who keeps very busy.
Yes. Well, absolutely. And I love this whole thing. And I love that you took your writing career and everything you love about theater and art and society and culture, and then turned it into this character with this newsletter, and then turn that into a television series and it's one thing to say I'm going to make it. It's one thing to say I'm going to write it. It's one thing to talk about it. And that's another thing to actually have it done. And you have an episode done. So that's quite an accomplishment.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, I think it is one of those things where sometimes like you just have to do it, which is so much easier said than done. I mean, it really is. And I think especially right now, where it's really hard to make things, and there are a lot of things that I think are actual like obstacles. They're not like obstacles in anyone's head. But I think particularly for me, because there was sort of like such a huge change from the interval stuff, which again was sort of very serious, very different, that I really felt like it was a good idea to show rather than tell. But again, it's hard to do because I think, I think advice that I found very frustrating when I was young, and that I think other young people now find frustrating, is when people will just be like, well, just go make some stuff with your friends, as if that's easy to do when things are highly expensive. And I think you don't necessarily always have the friends to make things with, which I think particularly right now when there's sort of so much still isolation and a lot of people struggling socially, I think it's very easy to sort of just be like, oh, just get to your friends together and do this. And it's like, well, that's actually really hard for some people. So I feel very lucky that we actually got to make it and had the resources to do that. And that it actually, met enough people. Like my friend Madeline, who produced it, was so, it would not have happened without her, because she was the one who really knew film people, which I didn't know how to find. So it's definitely a challenge to do.
Well, it absolutely is. And it's really quite the accomplishment. So congratulations. Like I said, we can follow you on Instagram, and we could stay up to date with that. We can go subscribe to the Substack newsletter, and we could look forward to the episodes 2, 3, 4, 5. And if it's going to be in a film festival, we could follow it on social media or wherever it's going to be premiered and shown, so we can stay up to date with you. Your Instagram is?
It's Victoriafication.
It's so funny.
I know. I need an easier one. It's one of those things where I made it, and like when I first signed up, without thinking that it would become more of like a professional tool. But I've just never changed it.
It cracks me up. I liked it. Victoriafication. You got it. You know what it is, everybody. Stop it. Well, we're going to be following. We're going to be looking, and we're going to be ready for what's next for you. And what an interesting, fun road to a television show. And what an interesting, fun. Let's go. Let's do it. And congratulations.
Thank you. And yeah, from your lips to HBO's ears.
Let's go, HBO. I'm ready. I'm coming on as a guest star then. That's what's going to happen. That's what we're going to, we wish you all the best. Congrats.
Thank you. And thank you for having me.
Anytime. My show's your show. Come on back.
Thanks.